The top business stories live from the Sky newsroom. Payday chaos. Millions of workers are hit by online banking issues for the second month in a row. Donald Trump opens the door to a possible trade deal with the UK after meeting Sir Keir Starmer. Plus, the drugs giant AstraZeneca to power all its research and development with clean energy. We'll be speaking to the UK chairman. Very good morning. Welcome to Business Live on this Friday with me, Darren McCaffrey. Just before we get into the business news this morning, let's take you back to Athens today, where we've seen Greek police fire tear gas at demonstrators. You can see them there trying to disperse the crowds after demonstrators threw petrol bombs. This is all at a protest to mark the anniversary of the country's worst ever train crash that we've seen turn violent. Tens of thousands of demonstrators had gathered in Athens on Friday trying to demand justice. 2 years on after that deadly crash, had become a symbol in many ways of the institutional failure in the country. That's the Acropolis there. As you can probably hear, though, still the sound of, I would suggest, baton rounds being used in the background. But as I say, protests have been held in dozens of towns and cities across Greece as part of that general strike that's grounded flights, halted sea and train transports, but has also turned violent this morning, with demonstrators throwing petrol bombs, leading to Greek police firing tear gas. That is the scene live in Athens this morning, and we'll keep across that story and bring you more details as we get it here on Sky News. Now, let's bring you up to date with another breaking news story closer to home this morning, and that is a number of the UK's biggest banks having been hit with online issues, leaving many customers unable to access the funds on payday. It is the second month in a row that major banks have been hit by this IT issues around payday. Services outage site Down Detector showed a spike in the number of issues reported by Lloyds Bank, Halifax, Nationwide, TSB, Bank of Scotland and First Direct. Let's bring in Chris Johnson, Senior Editor of Business Insider, who's been following this story for us this morning. Good morning to you, Chris. Just how wide-scale is this problem? It's certainly involving a hell of a lot of banks.
Yeah, absolutely, Darren. Yeah, it's quite, millions of customers use these institutions. And as you say, it's the second month in a row around payday that these issues have cropped up. It's going to be disturbing, of course, for these customers, particularly if you're making transfers or are concerned about direct debits going across. I mean, there's not a lot that customers can do, it seems. Obviously, the banks are working on this problem. They've certainly issued statements this morning saying they're aware of the problem and are trying to resolve it. That won't be much consolation, particularly if you're trying to make a transaction which involves transferring sums for a purchase of a property or transferring sums abroad, for example. Usually what happens in these instances, if there are any fees or problems associated with such delays, they're compensated, customers are compensated by the institutions. But it sort of does underline, the inherent problems with relying on, IT that banks, of course, do these days.
Yeah, and as we've been talking about it, it's the second month in a row. I mean, that has to be concerning. I mean, is there any suggestion here that there's something really fundamental that is the problem and that it needs to be sorted?
Yeah, I mean, it's very hard to speculate on what the causes are of this this problem today. It is unusual, I think, that it is affecting, so many institutions. Some of these brands are owned by the same company, but Nationwide, for example, is separate. First Direct is part of the broader HSBC group. But you can see the other institutions there on the screen. But I suppose the wider issue for banks is just the problems with aging IT systems in many respects. The attempts, to upgrade in the past have also led to problems. Some viewers may recall back in 2018 when TSB was separating from its parent company. All sorts of problems arose that left some customers locked out of their accounts for days on end. That TSB ended up being fined nearly 50 million pounds for those failures in 2023. But the older banks are also facing rising competition to some extent from some of these new entrants in the market, like Monzo and Revolut, that are built on completely new IT from scratch. A lot of the old banks have got legacy systems that are stitched together and sometimes creaking at the seams, which could possibly be the reason for some of these problems.
It almost reminds me, Chris, a little bit of what British Airways say about their IT system, that it's, was first invented in the 90s. They've been adding to it over the years, and actually it's all sticky plasters, and that means it easily falls apart. It's an interesting story, clearly one that matters to millions of people. Chris, very much indeed for that. Chris Johnson there from Business Insider. And a reminder, by the way, if you want more on this, and as I say, it is affecting millions of people, do go on to the Money blog on the Sky News website, and we are covering this story extensively for you this morning on the Money blog. Just go on to the Sky News website or the Sky News app to access that. Now, many warned that the Prime Minister was stepping into the lion's den when he arrived in the White House to meet Donald Trump yesterday. But Sir Keir Starmer seems to return home with some positive headlines this morning. The US is due to slap tariffs on a number of countries from next Tuesday, but after his meeting with the Prime Minister, he hinted that the UK could avoid that fate, with President Trump calling for a real trade deal. So what would that look like? Let's speak to Lizzie Galbraith, political economist at Aberdeen. Lizzie, good morning to you. What would that mean? Because it doesn't seem like it's a full fat trade deal, as we call these things. Something maybe a little narrower?
Yeah, I think that's probably the most reasonable expectation in terms of a deal that's actually doable, particularly a deal that's doable in the short term. We have had previous prime ministers and presidents, including Trump himself, attempt a full free trade deal between the US and the UK. And the differences between two sides on a number of issues are really quite significant. But there is probably a greater hope of achieving a deal on a more targeted range of measures, perhaps technology, for example, where the UK and the US are more aligned and a deal can more easily be done. And that could have quite significant symbolic benefits as much as anything else.
Yeah, it is interesting about how much is this symbolic in the sense of like President Trump feeling he's getting something, which maybe then means that he doesn't slap tariffs on. I was listening to Wes Streeting, the health secretary, this morning, suggesting, for example, NHS data may be supplied to companies in the United States, given the enormous pool of patients we have here in the UK. Is it that type of stuff?
It's potentially that. I think there are a lot of potential areas where you could be looking here. But yeah, data sharing, greater cooperation between companies on technology issues, for example, maybe regulatory alignment, for example, or guarantees that the UK and the US will work so that their regulatory structures align in the same areas and evolve in similar ways going forward. Those are all things that could potentially be looked at. But it doesn't necessarily seem at the moment like there's a clear path forward in that they already know what they're going to discuss. It more seems like we've got a desire to open talks and see what's possible, rather than a clear deal just waiting to be signed at this stage.
So, Liz, is the bottom line here that actually in the end, you're a political economist, this is more the political end of the scale than it is the economy?
Certainly for now, I think it is. Obviously, if the UK were to completely avoid tariffs and everybody else were to be in receipt of very significant tariffs, not necessarily something that we think is going to happen, but in that type of scenario, then it does become more economically salient, of course. But for now, I think this is largely around the political symbolism, and I think some will actually be quite willing to take that, given this is only the opening gambit of what will be a 4-year relationship. So, yeah, rather a positive meeting. quite light on the details so far. And potentially quite light on the economic benefit, but certainly in terms of the symbolism, quite important, I think, particularly as Europe does seem to be more closely in Trump's sights for some of these tariff threats at the moment.
OK, Lizzie, appreciate your time this morning. Thank you very much indeed. That's Lizzie Galbraith there, political economist at Aberdeen. Now, AstraZeneca has opened a new biomethane plant to enable it to power all its research and development and drug manufacturing with clean energy. The plant in Lincolnshire will produce biogas from organic waste and is the first of its kind to be built in the UK without a public subsidy. Well, I've been speaking to the chairman of AstraZeneca here in the UK, Sean Grady, and began by asking him about his company's plans.
What this partnership, what this collaboration we announced yesterday is about is how we fuel life sciences in the future. So in AstraZeneca, we have incredible research and development and manufacturing here in Cambridge, where I'm speaking to you from today with glorious sunshine, but also in Macclesfield, in Speke in Liverpool, in London and in Luton, where we employ something in the region of 10,000 people and invest £3 billion in R&D, the biggest private investment in research and development. But what we're also determined to do is to ensure that the life-changing medicines we produce are made sustainably. So we already have wide use of electricity across our operations globally. And what the announcement with the Future Biogas, the brilliant people at Future Biogas that we announced yesterday, what that achieves is renewable energy equivalent to 100 gigawatts annually, which is equivalent to the requirements of 8,000 homes and reduces CO2 emissions in the region of 20,000.
And Sean, it's interesting because we've seen a lot of companies in recent months essentially say they're going to move away from renewables. That is actually not the priority for them at the moment, maybe given the political situation we see in the world too. Are you saying AstraZeneca, is it wrong to say that you're doubling down on renewable energy?
I don't think we're doubling down, but our commitment to the climate is completely unchanged. And that's led from the top. That's a particular mission of Pascal Soriot, our CEO, and the Future Biogas collaboration will ensure that we're on track, that by the end of the year, 100% of the energy in our R&D and manufacturing activities in the UK will be renewable.
Let's talk about, you mentioned there, you've got a plant up in the northwest of England near Liverpool, and yet there was and had been a long-term plan for extra investment there. It fell apart last month. What went wrong from your point of view, Sean?
Yeah, I mean, it's disappointing that the Speke expansion won't be going forward. It's disappointing for AZ. It's disappointing from the government. I think if you stand back and think about it, the issue was timing. So the commitment to support the project was made by the prior administration. Then we had the election and the new government got elected. Correctly and properly, they had to do their due diligence and dig into the details of the project. Inevitably, that took time. So there was delay, and also the ensuing grant aid that was available was lower than we had previously expected. So at the end of the day, the project just kind of wasn't sustainable from a business case perspective, which was deeply disappointing to us, but also to the government. But you know what? Everybody worked really hard at this, and there were really no hard feelings. It's just one of those projects that we couldn't get over the line.
But do you not feel a bit let down by the government? I mean, this is a government that argues it wants to see growth, and life sciences is a big part of that.
No, I honestly don't think we do feel let down. I mean, we would perhaps have liked the whole thing to have moved a lot quicker. We would probably like to have less attention paid to the project in the media. But we completely understand how hard the government officials worked on trying to make the project happen, as did we. But, you know, as Pascal Soriot said in our annual results last week, it's kind of business. We talk to a lot of governments and a lot of countries, and these types of projects don't always work out.
I suppose that's the point that many people sitting at home will be wondering. AstraZeneca is an incredibly successful company, an incredibly big company. Why does it need taxpayers' money?
So, I mean, we're enormously committed to the UK. As I mentioned already, we're 10,000 people. We're investing $3 billion in R&D. You know, this is one of our 5 global R&D strategic sites. When companies like ours look to make capital expenditure, capital commitments, that very often there are inducements and incentives available in countries to attract that money to that particular location. So it's part of being a global company and part of being a successful company that you look at what incentivization and inducements are available to help oil the wheels of those particular projects.
And just very finally on this, I see the Liberal Democrats up in Liverpool and other politicians are saying, urging you guys in the government to look at this again. In fact, I think there was a meeting only just yesterday. Is that something you might be prepared to do?
So we're very committed to Speak. It's the expansion of Speak. It's going from egg to cell for the influenza vaccine that won't be going forward. We're looking at alternative ways of doing that, but I think it's very unlikely that that will happen in and around the Speak site. But we're really very committed to the Speak site, where we have a really talented workforce.
So it doesn't sound like the door is entirely closed, but unlikely, you're saying?
Yeah, exactly that.
OK, and John, just one or two more questions before you go, which is about vaccines. Clearly such a big part of what you guys do. You are big supporters, clearly, of the revolution that vaccines have provided in global health, and yet you've got a US Secretary of State, Robert F. Kennedy, who is not a fan of them. How troubling is that for you as a company in the United States?
Yeah, so vaccines is a very important part of our business, but it's not a bigger part of AstraZeneca as it is for some of our peers, you know, including GSK and Sanofi and Pfizer. So, again, we're very committed to vaccines. You know, we watch the political landscape very closely, but AstraZeneca is a truly global company. I mean, the US is our biggest market, China is our second, Japan is our third. So, you know, geopolitics are going to impact, how we think about future strategy inevitably, but we feel that our footprint is such that we can deal with, the ups and downs of political change, as well as anybody.
OK, and just very finally on that, though, in a slightly more positive note, we saw President Trump and Keir Starmer in the White House yesterday. There's talk about some type of deal, and clearly life sciences could be a big part of that. You know, the UK is a world leader, and clearly, surely a closer relationship on that with the United States, it would be beneficial?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the life sciences is a great asset for the UK, as we and GSK and all the other biotech and emerging life sciences companies say, but also which the government clearly believe and advocate. UK-US links are terribly important. As I've said already, the US is our biggest market. So, we're already hugely successful there. And strong US, Anglo, UK relationships can only help that situation.
There you go. That was Sean Grady, the chairman of AstraZeneca, speaking to me a little earlier. OK, you're watching Business Live here on Sky News. Coming up next, all eyes on summer. We'll be looking at this year's travel trends with the boss of Booking.com. Stay tuned.
Paris reverberated to the sights, sounds and smells of conflict.
There's a focal point to all this anger, and that is Emmanuel Macron.
I'm Adam Parsons, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Brussels.
There are dozens of people desperately clambering to get onto that boat. It is a chaotic scene, but it's being watched by dozens of French police officers on the beach. I've reported on migration across Europe, close up on the ground, understanding that sense of desperation and meeting the criminal gangs behind it. This old fishing boat set off from the Libyan port of Tobruk. There were 606 people who were on board. So we've been distributing life jackets to all the people on board this boat, and now the first person is coming on board. This is the ugly side of Italian football.
In Italy, everything is really organized.
Football's problems with hooliganism, racism were just dormant, and now they're back and they're getting worse. We cover so many countries, languages and cultures and work hard to gain trust to bring you the full story first. Help is slowly reaching these places. It's not just homes, but whole streets like this one that have been reduced to rubble and dust. This is a picture of destruction. Everywhere you look in this mountaintop community, there is absolute devastation. These are the settlers in waiting, keen to start a new life, to annex Gaza for Israel.
The least we can do is just kick them out of our land.
Gaza, which is just 2 miles in that direction, is under attack again. Getting the chance to tell people's stories, it's a privilege.
We are under Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film, but it's important to be in there. What a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club.
4 more years!
Free wherever you get your news. I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
I just took a shower above the clouds. You know why? Because this is the Emirates A380. Fly Emirates, fly better.
Now, some good news on this Friday. Today is officially the last day of meteorological winter. It's over. So a good day, perhaps, to think about planning for that summer holiday and an opportunity for us to look at what the travel trends will be this year. Let's speak to Glenn Fogel, Chief Executive of Booking.com, who is in the Netherlands for us this morning. Glenn, very good morning to you. I suppose, first of all, how has 25 started for you? Are we seeing quite a lot of demand already for spring and summer holidays?
Well, thank you so much for having me. And it's so interesting. You know, we had such a good 2024. We did our earnings call just last week, and right away, everybody wants to know, that's interesting, but what's happening right now today and what's going to happen in the future? And what we said is, we said things are going well. We said things are going well. You know, we said that people want to travel. They're always going to want to travel, and we're looking forward. Obviously, Easter, it's always a big thing here in Europe in terms of travel, and we're seeing people are traveling. You know, they're getting ready for it, and of course, we hope the summer will be as good as last summer. Can't predict it, though. You never know.
You never know, indeed, but it does seem, if you listen to the airlines, and we talk to them quite a lot here on Sky, they're saying that they are expecting quite a good year. Is there always a correlation, if you like, Glenn, between bums on seats on planes and how well you guys do?
Well, there's definitely a correlation. And look, we had a great last year in terms of flights. You know, last year we did 50 million tickets. Fantastic. We grew in the fourth quarter 52% year over year. So that's a great way to start off this year. Obviously, we always need people to want to travel, and whether they're going to go on a plane or whether they use a train or they get in a car, we're almost indifferent in the sense that we just want them to travel. But you're right, there is a correlation. And of course, in the end, it's the macroeconomic situation that really is going to drive how good is the summer going to be.
Let's talk about the zeitgeist, of course, at the moment, more than a zeitgeist, really. AI, isn't it? How do you see that transforming your business, as a user of Booking.com for quite a long time, I would suggest that the kind of experience of using Booking.com hasn't really changed very much in the last decade. Is that likely, at least as a user level, I don't know what's happening in the background, how is AI likely to change that experience going forwards?
Well, it's interesting, and I'm sorry to hear that you haven't seen the change over the last 10 years or so, because we think we made some tremendous changes. And you're right, AI is going to make tremendous changes going forward. Already right now, I guess you missed the part where you can do a natural language search right now on the Booking.com app, where you, instead of having to go through filters, you can just type in, like, I'm looking for a hotel that has afternoon tea, and I'd also like it to have a good gym, and I'd like it to be kind of close to Hyde Park. And that will be translated immediately into the system, and you'll come up with results that actually match up what you're looking for. And then, of course, the big thing that we're using is what we call our AI trip planner, which is very much so like some of the other large language model like ChatGPT or those. You're just typing in, hi, I'm thinking about taking a summer trip maybe to south of Spain, and I'm not sure where I want to go. And you have a conversation going back and forth, just like you would do on any of the other type of chatbots. This is one of the things we're doing, but there's so many things coming down the road from AI. I think it's going to make travel so much better, so much easier, so much less frustrating.
Okay. No, you're right. Maybe I think it's probably how I use it is the honest answer to that, Glenn. Let's just finally talk about where you think the zeitgeist, the trends are this year in terms of where are we seeing more people go that we haven't before, if you like.
Well, look, there are always, Greenland's kind of very popular nowadays in the news. That may stimulate some people saying, maybe I ought to check that out. That's something that there has been a lot of travel there in the past, but there are some new routes, some new airlines that will be going there, so that may be something interesting. Of course, people always want the usual, though, and that's one of the things that we recognize, that it's exciting to talk about the things that no one really goes to, but at the end of the day, most people are going to go to the places that most people have always gone to, because those are the popular places. So for European people, it's the summer holidays. Of course, depends on how hot it's going to be, how far south you're going to go. Last year, we did see an expansion of people going up north. People want to go to Norway, trying to get a little bit cooler up there. We'll see, though, again, it'll be determined by what people are feeling in terms of economically and where they want to travel in terms of what the weather trends are.
Okay. Glenn, fascinating stuff. And honestly, by pure coincidence, the only holiday I've booked this year is to Greenland, weirdly, but thank you very much.
There you go.
Indeed.
There you go.
That's Glenn Fogel, the Chief Executive of Booking.com. Thank you. OK, let's just bring you an update on that story that we reflected at the start of the programme about those banking delays. Well, we've just had a statement in from Lloyds, of course, who are also Halifax and Bank of Scotland, saying that the issue has been resolved and that the app and online banking services are now working as normal. Sam will have more on that at the top of the hour, and I'll see you on Monday. Have a very good weekend. Bye-bye.